The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
Hello and welcome to Fearless Fabulous You. I am your host, Melanie Young, and it is April 2026. And guess what? It's tax day, April 15th, 2026. I hope you've either filed or extended, but having a nice big exhale today. Would you know this? I didn't until this year. April is Financial Awareness and Security Month, and I dedicated 2026 to becoming more financially fit. I grew up in a family where spending was just what we did, saving was what we didn't do, and I watched both my parents run out of money in old age, and it scares the bejesus out of me because I keep reading all these horror stories about living past your retirement funds. So I decided that 2026 would be my year to get over it and reevaluate and strengthen my relationship with finances and money and not be as frightened as I have been all my life. I'm a daughter of a CPA, so tax time never scared me because he was also the CFO of my company and everything was a write-off, being in the type of business I was in. But I have a lot of listeners, a lot of friends, a lot of people, maybe you watching, who may be self-employed. Maybe you have a side hustle. Maybe you have a small business with employees. Maybe you are at the age like me where you're now taking Social Security and figuring out how to not outlive your finances. Maybe you're trying to put money away for your family. There's so many things out there. And in the middle of it was this big announcement this year of something called the One Big Beautiful Bill. And I don't know, it all sounded big and beautiful, and maybe it sounded like people feel like who are really wealthy are going to benefit more than the people like me or you. But I don't know about that. Because I got this great book that just came out, and it's by someone I've known for a zillion years, Tracy Byrnes, who is a CFDA and MBA and a leading voice of advisors for families looking to grow and protect their wealth. She is Vice President of Women in Investing for Lebenthal Global Advisors. I actually knew Tracy back in my PR days through a shared interest in wine. She was a business columnist for Fox News, and I had George DeBook on the show whenever Beaujolais Nouveau would come out. So ironically, we came to know each other through the wine world. She's actually a WSET level 3. Wow, that's an achievement. But her background is in finance, and she's really notching it up a bit, helping a lot of women going through what we call the big Ds, divorce, downsizing, debt, death, you name it, to make sure that they are financially secure. Her book is Deduct Everything. That sounds like something my dad would say. Hundreds of tax tips, legal write-offs, credits, and loopholes. Now, I am not a certified public accountant, and I am certainly not a financial specialist. I need help more than anybody. But I like to lean in and talk to people who are knowledgeable and ask the questions, because that's what I do, to see what how we can make better decisions and more confident decisions about our finances. And Tracy's an investment advisor, so she's not a CPA. But what we're going to start the show is saying we all make a decision about health and finance. Talk to people who are professionals in the area. What we're going to do today with Tracy Byrnes. So Tracy, welcome to Fearless Fabulous You.
Thank you for having me. Back introduction. And yes, I love that you and I connected over Beaujolais Nouveau. That's a long time ago now.
It was a lifetime ago because I left New York and you moved on. And we actually connected on LinkedIn, and you said you had this book out. And I was like, oh, Tracy, you got to come on the show. And you were like, are you still in wine? I said, yeah, I'm into wine too, but I've, got the other things since you know the wine business, the wine market sucks, right?
I know it's so sad. I feel like that's a whole, we need to help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's crazy. So let's talk a little bit about how you got into this aspect of the financial world.
So I was in business. 1,000 years ago, I got my MBA in accounting, to your point. I worked at Ernst & Young. I did taxes. I audited. I did the things. I couldn't do that for a living. So, but wanted to be a writer, fell into financial journalism. So I started writing for the New York Post, Forbes, Wall Street Journal, and found myself at Fox Business as an anchor reporter where you and I met. So did live TV for probably 10 years. Interestingly, I met so many great, fabulous women over the course of my time there. And the one commonality was they didn't know who to invest their money with, because while I love old white men, they didn't want to invest with them, right? They wanted the diversity of where are the women in the business. And so I knew there was a need. And I also got to an inflection point in media where I was done thinking about the next part of my life and what I wanted to do. And I think we all hit this point as women, especially, where we want to do something that really matters. And I wanted to be able to help people. I am divorced. I've been divorced for 20 years. And I felt like that was untapped. Women going through divorce, they're afraid to talk about it. I always say my age and up. I'm 55. 55 and up, many of them are stay-at-home moms still. And they're so scared and so nervous. And so I just thought it's high time someone gets out there and helps them. And so I became a financial analyst. I spent 8 years at UBS, which was great, and I learned a lot, but I have since gone independent, and it's just so liberating and fabulous. And, I don't have to have corporate minimums on my accounts anymore. I get to take on whoever I want to help. And it's really beautiful. And there's so much less pressure. Plus I get to do media and stuff like this with you.
I'm curious, Tracy, because you said you're independent, are you a fee-based consultant, or how do you work? Somebody may want to know how to find you and work with you. So let's get out that information.
Great question. So I'm with a registered independent advisor. So there's a team of people that help support me. But yes, I'm based on basically whatever is the stock market. Oftentimes, any of your bonds, your savings, or your money market accounts. It's hard to put a fee on that. There's nobody's doing it. Anything that requires work is feed.
So
that makes sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I'm late. Okay, here comes the big reveal. I got taken by someone really early on, a young white man, with my inheritance, and it really hurt a lot. A little bit of inheritance, but it hurt a lot, and I became very scared and didn't do anything for a very long time. And it took me years to even tell my dad what happened. But I lost quite a bit of money, and I've had to overcome that. And then when I did end up with some more money after selling houses, I needed to figure out what to do. And look, I'm 67, so it's a big issue. As I said, I've seen, my parents die and leave nothing but debt, and it's scary. So I really feel it's important early on in life. Everybody listened and watched this. Read my lips. Early on in life, you need to get a positive, healthy relationship with money and understand how to make it work for you. Right?
1,000%. And I would add to that, you do not need to know where Microsoft closed yesterday. Who cares? That's not the stuff you need to know. You need to know what you have. Do you have a 401k? Do you have life insurance? And you could just stop there. I don't care if you know that's all you need to know as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
You just answer some simple questions. That way you can start to ask smart ones. You don't need to know what Palantir is and what it does and why it's a meme stock these days, basically. You don't need to know that. You need to know if you are saving properly, if you're budgeting. Right. You need to know those basics. Let's not overcome. And I would say, with all due respect again to the old white guy, they use a lot of and a lot of code words, and I find that it's unfair and very. So I'm here to buy any you want to ask.
Well, you work with a lot of women who are going through divorce, and one of the sad thing, I'm not divorced. I'm married late, and I run everything. But the problem with many wonderful women who go through divorce is they have let their husbands run everything and are often blindsided by what they're left to deal with, or maybe they signed something that they didn't take a strong look at. Could have been a lot of things. And that's very hard. So what would you, I'm going to just going into a relationship or a marriage, take the romance out of it. It is a contract. What would you tell women to be really clear focused on financially?
So I'm divorced, and I say all the time, you should, marriage is a business relationship with the bonus of sex. But and that's people want to hear that from me. But I don't want you to, I don't want you to remove the romance. Be in love, but I want you to take it seriously. And I get that life gets busy, right? I get it, and you're going to probably hand off some responsibilities, right? What typically happens, Melanie, is like, and I'm going to use a heterosexual couple. She's working. They got some kids. She's got to get somebody's new cleats because they have soccer practice. She's got to make sure somebody has milk money. She does all the day to day. And she turns to her partner and says, you know what? You have basically the stuff that's not going to knock the wheels off the bus today. So she hands it off. The problem is they never reconnect and talk about what he's doing long term, what she's doing short term. So I would, young couple, have a little money date and ruin your whole date. But we go out, glass of wine, and ask some questions. Do we have retirement money? If so, where is it? How do I access it? Do we have life insurance? Great. How do I access it? Make sure you know usernames and passwords to every account, every. And then that's it. You don't have to hurt your head about this stuff. You just need to know what exists. We have a bunch of kids. How are we paying for college? Just ask some questions. That's it.
Yeah. No, I'll be honest with you, having that conversation in my my household is difficult. It's easier to have the glass of wine than the discussion about money. Trust me, it is hard. You wrote I love this book, by the way. I grew up, like I said, I was the daughter of a CPA. I deducted everything. I mean, Dad tried to deduct my wedding. He may have, I don't know. It was an event. I was in the events business. I had a staff member produce it.
It was a networking event.
Let's just say that was the last thing he said to me walking me down the aisle, literally at Commander's Palace. He looked at me, walking me down the aisle, arm in arm. Do you think we can deduct this? I'm like, Dad, it's my wedding. Anyway.
I love it.
Let's talk about the one big, beautiful bill. So the one big, beautiful bill, you're like, whoa, another big, giant exclamation point. And a lot of people think, well, it's for people who have a lot of money, so it didn't apply to me. But reading your book, I saw where it really does matter. And starting with, because I just filed my taxes, standard deductions have changed. And what's top line some of the key things that would matter for people that aren't like in the 1%?
Right. Like, so the thing with the 1% is their adjusted gross income, it gets too big for them to qualify for just about anything in this tax code. And that's pre the one big act. So there are a lot of things for middle income families in here, especially self-employed people. So let's start with, to your point, with the standard deduction. It was raised this year. So I think it's $15,750 for a single person, $31,500 for a married filing joint. So that it's higher than normal, or than it's been, I should say, which basically means you won't have to deal with the itemization of Schedule A, getting receipts for your charity work, your mortgage interest, your real estate taxes, all that stuff. If the standards is greater than your itemized, you get it and you're done. It does make the tax return a little bit easier. And that's, I think, that's the piece of it where they're expecting more people to get money back. You've heard, I'm sure, that people are supposed to be getting funds here. The standard deduction is a big piece of that.
It was big. And then, of course, I read your book this weekend, right after I'd filed my taxes, and I had a zillion itemizations and receipts. I was the girl that would put all her paper receipts in a box and just send them to Dad. Go figure it out. Right. Now I do spreadsheets and analysis and like days. But I was like, oh, I didn't have to do that. But that's good. That's good. The other thing is senior. So I am senior, I guess. and I have a younger husband. He's 62, I'm 67, but it says that, many of us have paid off mortgages or don't have one, and we have different kinds of expenses and a lower income. But apparently the deduction is better, right? For seniors.
Right. You get an extra $6,500, which is amazing. And you should, by the way, you earned it. You've done your time. So you shouldn't be penalized just because, like you said, you are downsizing. You paid off your mortgage. You did all the right things. So the extra 6,000 per person, and it's a couple years. It's not forever. This is not one of those permanent, but take advantage of it while you can. The things that are permanent, and I say permanent loosely. Is everything permanent? I'm not really sure, but they made the estate stuff permanent, so at least wealthy people can plan better. But as far as all these extra deductions, they all come to take advantage of them while you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's talk about the big looming issue of what you can insurance. What kinds of insurance you can deduct. I mean, I run everything through a company, the Connected Table. I think I keep the company open just to go and run everything to it. But which has its advantages. You've got medical insurance, you've got business insurance, you have life insurance, you have disability insurance, you have long-term insurance. I don't know about 30% of what my budget is insurance. What has anything changed with that? What is deductible?
No, so it's still your healthcare premiums, which you absolutely have deduct 50% of the deduction, right? And business, yes. But long-term care, that kind of stuff, generally not, depending on your plan and the way it's written. I will say you could use your HSA account to help you long-term care. So that's something at least to try to get a little benefit out of it. But for the most part, medical expenses are tough. You have to be, above 7.5% of your adjusted gross income. They're still difficult. So, but again, save your receipts. You never know. If you had a big year with a lot of medical expenses, save all that stuff. Save it. Give it a shot.
Yeah, even though you don't need to have receipts. I save receipts because you could get audited, and you have a great section on the word audit scares me. What to do if you get audited, because then you really do need to have all your receipts. How many years do you have to keep of your tax records as an individual and as a business?
Generally 3. I would say as a business, say 5. The audit chapter was semi like tongue in cheek, meant to be. I know I had a Goodfellas reference in there. I want people to understand, if you're audited, it is not the end. They're not going to take away your children, right? All they're doing is asking some, and you know what? Win an audit. Over the course of my life, got the infamous letter. I think we're also afraid that this caricature of Uncle Sam is going to show up at the door and take away like our firstborn. It's wrong on our tax return. We're so scared. All an audit it really is they just want proof. They want a little backup. They want to understand what you did. Maybe you did miss something. Maybe you didn't, though, and they. So I have to tell you, I did get a letter, the letter audit, and I sent my documentation, and it went away. So you can, I say win loosely, but win these things too. Don't be afraid. They're just double checking. Sometimes there's technological errors. Just give them what they need and move on with your life.
Yeah. And so this is interesting. David and I got all the free stuff now that they offer seniors, the free dinners, but I get something out of all of them. So I went to one recently and he said, I'm a tax planner, not a traditional CPA. You need someone who can help you with tax planning versus a CPA who just does your taxes. Let's explain that and the difference for people, because I was like, oh, really? Let's explain the difference and why you may need both, or when you may need both.
Or someone who does, right? I just had this conversation, believe it or not, with my boyfriend. I earn kids. He's got, there's no on tax return. Like, you have to talk to a planner is going to look at this one big beautiful bill and help you take advantage of it. Even though it's on the cover of the book, it's not a loophole, right? It's stuff in the bill. Right now, it's law, and you're taking advantage. But sometimes we just don't see it. You need someone in it, not just someone who's in. That's your tax error, right? I could actually. You need a planner, a CPA who is specializing in tax planning to help you navigate and figure out, what I'm, and it could save me money down the road. So it's not a bad conversation to have with someone with money.
Well, I'm doing it, I'm looking at this person right now as a bridge between my financial advisor, who is, not fee-based, it's a big company, and my CPA who just does my taxes, and then making, in the evaluation, and everybody should do this regularly, like you do everything else, to see what I'm doing right or wrong, because I'm at a different stage of my life, as is David.
Yeah.
And it's very different when you get older. Your income drops. You're very cognizant of what things cost and what you have left and how to use it wisely. But then sometimes you're bringing in side hustle. Let's talk about side hustles, because I have some side hustles that actually brought in some money last year. And I was surprised because I probably didn't do the best record keeping on them, because, you do them through Venmo and cash and everything.
I know.
How should we be handling those side hustles that actually turn out to be pretty good?
Well, so to finish your previous thought, though, you should organize a call with your tax planner, your financial advisor, and yourself. And you just have to sit there and listen. They could talk it out. You just have to facilitate, right? You don't have to know everything, but they need to be on the same page. Just as an example, the financial advisor needs to know, okay, you know what? She's going to have a big tax bill because of her small businesses. So try not to generate a ton of capital for her and go selling stuff all year long. That'll be a double whammy for her. Just have the conversation. June 30th, I'd say. That way you get a sense of whether you have enough held. You might need to make an estimate. It's not terrible. Before you go off 4th of July and have a fabulous summer, think about facilitating a call. That's all. And like I said, you don't even have to know anything. You just have to make the introduction.
Well, that's kind of what I'm doing now, because, you don't want to do it, April 10th. After doing my taxes this year, and I haven't done them yet, he ended up, because I also have corporate ones that come later, so sometimes there's extensions. I realize it's time to do this, and my circumstances are different because, there's also, and let's talk about this, many of us are at an age where they've been caring for an elderly parent. The parent dies and we inherit something, whether it's small or large. There's always something, because you have to deal with what they leave behind. And I learned that inherited income or from a sale of a house, whatever, is handled very differently than earned. And then we'll get into state by state. Talk about that, because I'll be honest with you, Tracy, when I was living in Tennessee, because I've lived in 3 states since we've connected in New York. And so I was talking to a Tennessee CPAs, plural, because I interview people. One of them put the hell and fire and damnation in me and said, I'm going to have a big tax bill, to the point where I was like, whoa, he's so dramatic. And then I went to another one and said, not a problem. Not a problem. Well, that's a big difference, right? Mm-hmm. Guess who I went with? Not a problem. Right. And I didn't have a problem. But let's talk about that, because a lot of us are dealing with the estate and taxes. And how does that all work in while you're still drawing an income, doing other things?
Right. So like often, especially if it's like a small little investment account, you inherit it, and the cool part about it is you get the step up in basis on. So if you inherited a stock portfolio, and let's just say for argument's sake, they bought, I'm making numbers up, Apple at $10 a share, and now today it's $100. You inherit that at $100. So that means when you sell it, you don't have any capital gains. That's great for you. That's something that people need to pay attention to. And you need to tell your advisor when this stuff comes in the door, like, by the way, this is inherited. They change the cost basis. Sometimes it doesn't happen. Home way, when you inherit a home, there's all these tax implications to it if you go and sell it. Very important to bring up again to that tax planner, not necessarily the preparer, and of course your financial advisor. And for the really, really wealthy, that $15 million on the estate tax that you can gift estate tax free, that in theory is permanent. Again, I don't think it actually is permanent anymore out there. They're saying it's permanent. It's not. It was sunsetting, so, which basically means it was 15 million and then it was going to be 7, and it laddered down. So that's really hard to plan when you're trying to, especially like, it doesn't have to be wealthy people from Manhattan, right? You're talking about farmers and things like
Yeah.
that. So now at least, okay, it's 15 million is to be tax free. That's really important. But yeah, the smaller accounts, the rollover IRA, an IRA, it has to be emptied in 10 years, which you have to take money out. And when you take money out, there is an income tax burden on that. So,
Yeah.
well, it does create tax implications.
Well, you said something interesting. I didn't know what step up and all these terms were. So I was swimming. My mother had died. I was dealing with all, and man, I needed to know all that stuff. You talked about something called SALT. I didn't know what it was. I just know it's what you put on food. What is SALT? SALT. And what is the
So
benefit?
unless you live in a high tax state, you probably don't even care about this. But for those of us that do, I'm in New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, California, our state tax is so high. We're getting a on Schedule A, hence the itemization was really important at the time. They dropped it to $10,000. And for a lot, like, that means nothing, right? Our state tax is $50,000. They've raised that state and local tax deduction to $40,000. It's a big deal for a lot of people in those high tax states. On the first front, consider that when you are thinking about separating assets and dividing gets the house and who the person who qualifies for that big deduction should get the house, because that makes way more financial sense as opposed to giving it to some low who doesn't have enough money on it, feels she has to stay there. So I do think there's tax as well that's often.
Well, this is why you need a tax planner, and because you don't know all these things, and you get information coming at you from all over. There's something called the child tax credit, right?
Mm-hmm. 22.
What is it?
$2,200 a kid. Yeah, limitation, certain age bracket. The kid, I think goes away at 14. And again, if your income is too high, you don't get it. But Uncle Sam basically says it's expensive to raise kids. We're going to give you a little. That's really what that
is. It's a one time, right? So, does paying for your child's education have any deductibility?
There are, the lifetime learning credit is great if you're paying for college or education. If you don't get a 1098-T that stands for tuition, though, then you cannot. So if to a university, you are paying for school. Online classes don't count. You will.
Online classes don't count?
They do not. They do, well, I guess I should say a random online class does not count. An online class from like Harvard, that's actually a good question, and I do not know the answer to that.
Yeah, because like Cornell, they're all doing online now, particularly since, but probably the WSET wine course is not deductible. However, if you're a wine writer, a wine educator, or a wine podcaster, there is a deducted. It's got to be because it's an expense. It's business expense, but I see what you mean.
That's very, either way, ask your preparer about all that. You're paying for college. You know what? Just go to your preparer, Armed and Dangerous, and say, these are all the things I pay for. Do I get deductions on any of it? And that's it. Let them do their job.
Yeah, obviously your dog is not your child. I love that in there. There's certain things that don't work, but if you're doing it, it's like I work from home, and I do have, and you're very clear in the book. You have a dedicated. Take a picture of your office so that if you do get audited, you can say, this is my office. There's not a guest bedroom in here. Or this is really the office. And so many people are working from home and remotely, and that does cause some other deductions and expenses as well for tied into that. Charity. How has charity donations changed? I think we mentioned it briefly a little while ago, but let's be more specific because I saw something on TV about it today. About we should all be doing donations because there's a new tax law.
I will say though, don't be afraid of it. Like people are afraid of it. I wish the title of the book was Deduct Everything.
Right.
If you are not afraid, people are like, what? If you look and there's no playroom in the and there's or washing machine, right? it is your office and where you go every day, and you don't have a designated office anywhere else, take it. You deserve it. To that I will say that. Charity. So now you get anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 deduction for charitable contributions if you do not itemize. So right off the bat. So take it. Because and part of that was they don't want to hurt charities now, right? It sounds terrible, but a lot of people, myself included, would come down to the wire and donate on December 30th just to get that deduction up because I needed it. And so if I'm not itemizing now, I'm not doing that. So they have to still incentivize people to give. So it's $1,000 to $2,000 depending on your income. And then on the other side, if you itemize, there is a limit now on based on your income as to how much you can deduct for charity. But when you're tallying your charitable contributions, don't forget little things like if you're driving to a church picnic and you're donating brownies, you get miles for driving to it, and the cost of the brownies are part of your deduction. So like it sounds all ridiculous, but it all adds up. So keep track of all those little things. You know, I always said the ingredients in the church casserole, deduct it. Anything you give, pay attention to it. If you give clothes, be very careful. Of course, you can't declare retail on that. But if you're donating items in shoes, whatever, make sure you keep record, because even if it's $2 here, $3 here, it all adds up.
I donated a lot of my mother's stuff to the point where they were like, "You're here again," and it was significant in the scheme of things. Right. What about your time? Can you deduct, like, I'm giving my professional time, normally I bill at $200 an hour, or is that hard to document?
I would. Not that I know of. And maybe.
Yeah, well, because, I've heard of some crazy deductions that people do, and I'm like, really? But some of them do make sense and some of them don't. I thought this was interesting. You brought it up briefly because you live in the New York, New Jersey area, which is super high tax area. And many people are now actively researching where to live. That you see all these lists of the most tax-friendly states and where to go to retire. But we all know that the money's got to come from somewhere. So if they're not taxing you, it's coming through sales tax or whatever. And I, having now lived in 3 states, I've learned as well. What should everyone who's thinking about that big relocation consider in terms of state income tax, federal income tax, their social tax on Social Security, and any other factors?
So at the end of the day, so you have to put the money aside and make sure you like the view out your. And people ask the question, where should I go live? What do you like to do? Where do you want to live? And we can back into trying to choose between. I get there, but I can't say you should go to Florida because there's state tax and it's going to save money. If you like more, that's a terrible. It's terrible.
I know.
Not to mention, to the point, Florida's the cost of living is getting more and more expensive in a state like Florida because they have to make up the money somewhere. So, Wyoming, New Hampshire's, the states that are state tax free right now, nothing is free in this world. So, very aware you're going to get, as my grandfather used to say, nickel and dime somewhere in order for them to pay.
Also, just speaking from experience, I live in Louisiana, which is not the cheapest. The cost of living is low in Louisiana, but I didn't buy, I rent. Why? Because it is expensive to have a house in Louisiana because we are in a major hurricane zone and property insurance is high and you've got to have FEMA. I still have FEMA and I rent because, why? Because I can only do much rental insurance, but I want to be covered. Right. And you have to think about those things, property taxes. You also have to look at when you change states and you're not on general Medicare, A and B and whatever, you have to then go to the state. You have to get a whole new insurance plan. And it changes dramatically because Tennessee was very inexpensive. There's no state income tax in Tennessee. There's no very low cost. My car insurance in Tennessee and my health insurance in Tennessee was a lot lower than in Louisiana. Also, Louisiana is the Napoleonic Code. So really talk to your financial advisor carefully about that and
Yes.
your inheritance.
Right, because Florida car insurance is ridiculously high. So again, that's why figure out what you want to do.
You know, my advice to anyone thinking about moving is go where either go if you're near family, because you always go visit your family, or go where you always go on vacation to have a good time.
Right.
Like we went to New Orleans all the time. So we were like, now I don't have to pay to go to Jazz Fest. I live here. So that was a big decision. I mean, it was really tempting, Tracy, to stay in Chattanooga because I had a free house, but it wasn't free because it needed a lot of work and there were property taxes. And I was always going to be going places. And the airport was, I needed a better airport. So we chose to move to Louisiana. It came with some expenses that I'm not happy about, but we're immensely happy living here. And I think that's the key, is you need to be immensely happy where you are and be able to afford it so that you can do all the things you want to do.
Right. That's what so if you want to live on a golf, okay.
Right.
You got to, you can't say, put me where I save the most money, because
yeah, I mean, I'm going to tell everybody, stop reading all those crazy lists that keep popping up on your feed.
Right.
Because, you may have looked at them one or two times. And for this show, I research a lot of stuff. And then you start getting all the crap sent to you. And it gets you.
Exactly. Right.
So I'm curious, since you are in the financial world, are there certain media sources or people you follow that you respect?
So that's a great question, because as you know, I read work, right? First I read, but and I speak regularly. But again, there's a lot. So but if you're going both sides, if you are a Fox fan, please make sure with CNN. Do your due diligence. Don't be excited about things, because it's not to decipher and annoy.
I try to read different things, and I read a lot of books, but I also, I try to be the CEO of my life, so I try to have trusted advisors, and I evaluate them and monitor them as well, and if they're not working, then I move on to the next one, and I've had to do that many times with the CPA, because my dad walked on water, and I always had no problems with him. Probably paid all the problems, but because my mom was like, when he died, she's like, why am I paying taxes now? Well, he paid her taxes for it. She didn't know that, because it was very hard after he died getting
Of course,
a trusted tax person. I think I went through 4 CPAs.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Interview your advisor. They need you. Right? Go find something. And I always say, because you should be comfortable enough to open up everything in your. My son is getting married. You might have or so and so needs to, that she's paying for out of pocket. I got to know this. That affects us. And it's comfortable. Hey, I'm not engaged. I want to be with the text you send out. That's the kind of relationship that I have with. That's what you should be in.
And they should not be talking down to you. They should make time for you. They should nickel and dime you. There's so many, you've got to, it's trust and respect. And, everybody's in the business of selling their time. Time is precious, but I remember a lawyer when my dad died, and he was like, it's 15 minutes for this and 15 minutes for that. And I'm like, I actually like the guy I'm working with now. I've actually never met him. He's in Chicago, but he seems to like, he responds, he answers. I haven't any problems. But I am talking to a tax planner here in Louisiana so that I can fill in what I think is a gap in the trifecta of investment advisor, tax planner, and CPA. And then I may make changes still, because you have to, sometimes you can't be too comfortable. You have to always make sure you're checking things. I mean, I went for years not looking at anything, and then I had to learn to look very carefully.
Okay, but we shouldn't be hard on our that. Life happens.
Right.
10 years, 5. As long as you start, it doesn't matter when. Start learning, start asking, start read. And I tell women, especially, well, we were not born like I don't know why we're so embarrassed to talk about it, because we have to ask questions. It's not latent to learn with, and you certainly learn. So there's no other but to ask.
Right. And there's no dumb question.
There's not. Again, how would you know otherwise? And I'll tell you what, I have a meeting accounting, and they were all the things. They still didn't know how to write the difference between a W-9 at work. Like, they didn't learn those basics. You should not be embarrassed. You should be more embarrassed for education, quite frankly. That's another day. But ask questions and do not be embarrassed.
Yeah, and start dipping your toes in the water soon. I mean, the sooner you can, at any age, just don't be afraid of dealing with your finances, and don't just say, "Oh, I'll let so and so handle that. They're the expert." Knowledge is power.
Sure is.
And I have become more empowered because I made it my decision, a little late, but decision to become more knowledgeable. And I got to tell you, Tracy, your book, I just did the final plug, Deduct Everything. It was easy to read because it's very straightforward. It doesn't talk over your head. It's the way I would have written a book. Just, okay, here's the question. Let me give you the answer. And it was very helpful. I read it in a weekend. So, it's easy to do. I'm so excited that we connected. We'll have to connect again over wine.
Please, I would love it.
Yeah, but I think, everyone, I would like every woman out there to be very comfortable and more elevated about their knowledge of their finances and their wine.
One of these days, I'm going to podcast.
Yeah, you could do a finance and wine.
I just did a podcast called Women Matters, and it literally is like a vocabulary lesson. I encourage people to listen and literally think, what is the S&P 500? Words that are thrown around all the time. What is equity? It's stock, but why do people use equity? Stocks? They're just being fancy. So just the jargon, once you get the jargon down, then you could actually turn the business channel on background and start.
Well, that's why I asked about SALT and OBBA, One Big Beautiful Bill. And I didn't even know what an ETF was. I had to look it up. And then my husband didn't know what it was. I had to tell him. And I was so proud that I could tell him what it was, because he's like, what's that? And I'm like, well, okay, an electronic trade fund. But you got to learn the jargon. It's like with wine. You got to learn the jargon.
That's it. It's, sadly, it was a little bit of a boys' club for a lot of years, and they used a lot of code. It's like, when I remember Pig Latin.
Well, I had a lot of friends who got their start early on in entry-level finance jobs, and one by one, they either got let go, aged out, or they had issues with harassment. I raised my glass of water to every woman that is still in the business at this point. A few still are in there, and they're very senior and doing well, but I raise a glass to people like you who are there and making it easier for other women to get in and get involved and become experts in this area, because it's a good area to be in. Honestly, if I did my life over, I wouldn't even consider getting into it, because I've become more interested in it.
Well, because as you said, knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power.
Anywhere from 30 to 50 trillion trillion from men to women. So all this money is coming to us. Again, I am not telling you understand what you have. Because then we can change the world. We can change politics, change the educational system, anything that bothers you. We can do it, but we just need to learn how to hold on, understand. Otherwise, I hate to say it, but they'll. So,
well, great points, and I hope everybody benefits from this conversation because it's it's never too late. Never too late. Tracy Byrnes, thank you. It's been really great to see you and talk to you. You'll be able to see the show on YouTube and about 65 podcast channels, evergreen. So it's always good to listen and watch, and always know that you have choices in life on how you want to live yours. Live them on your terms and not on the terms of somebody else, and always choose being fearless and fabulous. Thank you.